Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Nice to be with you all, alhamdulillah. I don't know why every time I come to Houston, I just make it for the program. But alhamdulillah, we make it. The thing about Wahab Hamza is that you put your picture on the flyer without, verifying, it's like a da'if source. When it's there, it's there, so you gotta show up. No, and of course he asked. And your airport, Houston is, I travel all over the country, and I hold the flag of Houston everywhere I go. I always say that one of the top cities in America is Houston. Because you guys are, mashallah, a huge Muslim community, to be honest, all jokes aside. But the airport is like medieval times, so it takes a long time for everything to move. Alhamdulillah, we're able to make it. And inshallah, hopefully we have some time together today. And inshallah, we're able to share some thoughts and reflections on the beautiful topic that you all are starting. And I think it's something that you all will benefit from. I know a lot of people who talk about the signs of the Day of Judgment simply for the intrigue of it. And for the build up, we have almost made the signs of the Day of Judgment like a movie, like an apocalypse, or like this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. I mean, it's not really just that. There's much more to the signs of the Day of Judgment. So inshallah, I'll start you all off this week, and hopefully every single week you're able to use today's session as a preface, as a foundation to know how to understand and how to just get through all of these different signs that you will go through, inshallah, in the ongoing and incoming sessions, inshallah ta'ala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wal aqibatu lil muttaqeen, was salatu was salamu ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammad al-Nabi al-Alamin, alladhi ismuhu maktubun fil Injili wa Tawrati, amma ba'd. فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. My dear brothers, sisters, elders, and youngsters, one day a man came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'a? When is the Day of Judgment? When is the Day of Judgment? Ultimately, we enjoy or we're intrigued by learning about the signs of the Day of Judgment to know when the Day of Judgment is. Because the signs are indicators to the calling of the Day of Judgment. So a man comes, a Sahaba comes. He says, Ya Rasulullah, when is the Day of Judgment? Tell me when it is so I can prepare for it. So the Prophet says, why are you asking about the Day of Judgment for? What's your intrigue in this? What is so exciting about the Day of Judgment that you have some time with me and the only question that you're focused on is when is the Day of Judgment? The man says, Ya Rasulullah, so I can prepare for it. The Prophet says, well, closer to you and more certain for you then the Day of Judgment is your death, which is essentially the greatest call towards Al-Qiyamah, which is closer to you than the evening that you are to reach, which is closer to you than your own shoelace. Another man comes to the Prophet and says, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'a? When is the Day of Judgment? So all of the signs that you will learn in the incoming weeks, we must learn them and internalize them with this mentality. The sign is further from me than my own death. Regardless of what sign we're talking about, whether it's the emergence of Dajjal, or it's the descent of Isa alayhi salam, or the sun rising from the opposite side, all of these are accurate, confirmed signs that are found in the books of authentic narrations. But more authentic, more verified than any of those signs is the person knowing that death will come to them. And ultimately the signs of the Day of Judgment, if you experience them, the purpose of them is to make a person more vigilant to preparing for the akhirah. But if death is more certain than the sign itself, then preparing for death should be enough for us to prepare for the akhirah. Because that's the ultimate sign. So the man comes, Ya Rasulullah, that's the first aspect of how we internalize these signs. The second is the man comes, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'a? When is the Day of Judgment? The Prophet says, Ma addatta laha? You're asking with so much certainty and you're asking with so much, excitement. He says, what have you prepared for it? Ma a'datta laha? What have you prepared for the Day of Judgment? And the man responds with honesty. He says, Ya Rasulullah, ma a'dattu min kathrat as-siyami wal as-salat. I don't really have much in my portfolio of deeds in regards to my prayer, my fasting, or my charity. I don't have much. He's like us. Of course, Sahaba are better than us. But we're people who lack in all of those departments. That was his humility. But for us, it's our reality. Right? So this is our reality. We lack. We simply are getting through. And that's not to trivialize the good that we're doing, but just to know that there's so much more that we can do. You see, I don't have much. Like, I haven't prepared. You ask me what I prepared. I don't have a portfolio of good deeds like Abu Bakr, radiyallahu anhu. I don't have the sacrifices like Mus'ab ibn Umair, radiyallahu anhu. I don't have that. He says, what do you have then? He says, وَلَكِنْ أَعَدَدْتُ حُبَّ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. However, I have prepared, without a shadow of a doubt, the certainty of love that I have for Allah in you. That I can declare with any level of hesitation that I love you and I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that love is what I'm banking on. You know what I'm banking on, my friend? Like, I'm banking on my love, that this will take care of me in the akhirah. This is enough. This is what the Prophet used to say, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. That a person on the day of judgment, the day that will be ultimately the scariest and the hardest day, regardless if you're righteous or not righteous. If a person is lacking righteousness or is not a Muslim, it will be difficult for what they have to deal with. But for a person who is a believer, it will be difficult for knowing what others have to experience that you may love as well. At the day of judgment will be a hard day even for the Prophet of Allah. Because you'll have to experience Abu Talib going somewhere else where he would have loved for him to go to Jannah with him. The day of judgment will be a hard day for Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he's seeing his entire nation and his grandchildren and all of us being his progeny going to Jannah, but then he's going to have to see his father being dragged into Jannah. And just because you're pious and righteous doesn't mean you lose love for your family members. That love is real. It's not like the Sahaba when they became Muslim, instantaneously they were able to remove their love for their family. No, that love was ever present, but the love of the Prophet just was stronger. It wasn't as if the love for their mother diminished. Because Islam never comes and lessens something in your life that is good. There is never a time where the beauty of this religion enters into a space except that it elevates it. It never confines a person's potential. It directs the person's potential. It never limits the person's growth. It simply gives it a veneer that is worth having, which is Islam. It's not like Umar radiyallahu anhu or the Sahaba started hating their companion. No, they loved their family. They were in love. This is why when, there were like some tabi'een. Like tabi'een were the people that came after the Sahaba. They were sitting with a companion by the name of Miqdad ibn Aswad radiyallahu anhu. And they said, you saw the Prophet, طوبى لهاتين العينين اللتين رأتا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says so beautifully, how fortunate, in simple translation, how fortunate were these eyes of yours that were able to see the beauty in the presence of our Habib sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Indeed, how fortunate were those eyes. How fortunate were your hands that you were able to touch the hands and the palms of the Prophet sallallahu. And as he's saying this, he goes on and he continues and he remarks that if we were alive, if I was alive at the time of the Prophet, I wish I was there. If I was alive at the time of the Prophet, you would have seen how much I would have sacrificed for the Prophet. You know how people talk big? Like, you're lucky, they're lucky I'm not in Gaza. Yeah, the people of Gaza are lucky we're not there. Because we would be running the other way. No, people are where Allah wants them to be. This is why we're taught never to ask Allah to raise you in a time that you were not born in. Allah puts us in, Allah's timing is perfection. We see excellence in life. One of the qualifying factors for excellence is timing. And Allah is the greatest muhsin, which means Allah's timing is also perfection. There's never something which is early, there's never something which is late. That is simply a mindset that a person has because they are entitled to something that they believe they own, which we don't. Death is not ours, life is not ours, which is essentially the greatest blessings of life. So everything else is also not ours. It's just a moment of amanah that we all have been entrusted with. So this man talks big. Like, if I was alive at the time of the Prophet, I would have, carried the Prophet on my back. The Prophet would never have had to walk. So he's like, flexing. Miqdad says, hey man, I'll tell you the truth. If you were alive at the time of the Prophet, I'm not sure if you would have been amongst the believers or the munafiqs. Give him a reality check. He said, what do you mean? He said, do you think it was easy for us to stand on the battlefield and across the battlefield was our own father or brothers? You think that was easy? Right? Great people make difficult things look very normal. That is why it's called greatness. And when people are not great at something, they make the most mundane movements seem like they're very difficult. You know, sometimes parents will say to the youngster, why do you make like getting out of bed so difficult for? Just get out of bed. It's not that hard to get out of bed. Just a simple move, just get out of bed. But us youngsters are like, oh my God, I got out of bed today at 8 a.m. Like, but 8 a.m. is not 5 a.m. It's 8 a.m. It's like 2 hours after Fajr, right? My point is like, you know, like NBA, like people, basketball, like NBA players, if they make a three-point shot, move on with their life. People like you and I, we make a three-point shot, we look around like, yo, you catch that on camera? Because our level of greatness is not what their level of greatness in this is, which is a very small skill. It's not something which we should have envy of. But the point is that these were great people. So they made sacrificing their family seem very normal. But it wasn't normal. They loved Allah and the Prophet, but they loved their family as well. So on the Day of Judgment, where everyone is struggling to some degree, the Prophet of Allah pacifies us with a beautiful narration. And he says, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. That you will be with those whom you love. And if a person loves Allah and the Prophet, you will be with Allah and the Prophet. And if a person loves someone else or loves a different ism or a lifestyle, then be sure that you are actually saying to Allah that I want to be with them in the akhirah as well. Right? We can't, you know, you can't switch teams after the buzzer sounds. You understand what I'm saying? You can't switch teams when the game finishes. You choose your team before the game starts. You can't switch your team after you already lost. Similarly, we chose our team. None of us, and I say this for myself firstly, primarily, none of us simply just became Muslim. No. We chose Islam. And Islam chose us. We chose Allah. We are very intentional when something haram comes our way to turn it away. That's because we chose Allah. A lot of times those who are born Muslims, people always tell us, oh no, you didn't choose Islam. No, we choose Islam every single day. We choose Islam every single day when something haram comes our way. We choose Islam 5 times a day when we bow in front of Allah. We choose Islam because we see the value that it gives us. So the Prophet says to this man, what do you have prepared? And the man responds by saying, I have Allah's love and your love. So the second veneer through which we see the signs of the Day of Judgment is understanding that nothing that we can do for it will prepare us more so than having the love of the Prophet in our life. That in itself is the greatest preparation that a person can have. Because now the a'mal will always lack. But the love can always increase and it can cover that area. So that is the lens through which we speak about the signs of the Day of Judgment. The Salaf, when they would speak about the signs of the Day of Judgment, they would take one or two methods. They would use one of two methods. A, they would focus primarily on the signs that were present in their society. Why? Because it would remind the people that time is close. Time is close. And the second method was to speak about the major signs so that people could be more grateful about their own situations. You understand what I'm saying? You know, in today's time, what's happening in Gaza and Sudan, Kashmir, especially Gaza, this is something which our parents, grandparents perhaps have never seen in their lifetimes. But there was a Mughal dynasty. There was the Crusaders. There was the Spanish Inquisition. Islam has suffered in different eras. We are suffering today. Our brothers and sisters are suffering today. But what the scholars, the Salaf would do is in these moments, they would speak about the larger signs of the Day of Judgment that would be greater tests and greater challenges. Not to make it seem like our test was any less, but to simply allow us to recognize that I can get through this. Because that is a test that will ultimately destroy a community, like the jab, like the dabba, the beast that will come. So they would take one of two methods, and they would fit these different signs into one of two methods. So today, I will share 3 signs that are present. I will take the first method, which is speaking about the signs that are present within us, which is to remind us that when the Prophet spoke of these signs, he said that this will be the worst of people. Because the further along you go, the less virtuous we are than the community that came before us. As a whole, not as individuals, because every generation will have the cream of the crop. وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. Every generation will have its forerunners. And I oftentimes tell our students that we're fortunate that Allah raised us in this generation. Like, I'm fortunate that Allah raised me in this generation. I know for sure that if I was raised in an earlier generation, I would have been a bench warmer. Like we're nobodies. No one would have asked us to volunteer. Imagine being asked to volunteer when you have to be hanging around. Like, bro, what are you doing here? Like, aren't you supposed to be on the floor, like floor level, not the suite, right? Allah brought us in the right time because we can become a sabiqun of this generation. But the few signs that we can keep in mind from today's session, I'll mention 3 and I'll support each of them through a hadith. And inshallah, through that we can also reflect upon them when we leave today. The first sign that rarely is spoken about, but is something that the community suffers with as a total, not something which is specific in people in America or Canada, all across the world, which is يُعْجِبُ كُلُّ ذِي رَأْيٍ بِرَأْيِهِ. Man, like if I could speak about this all night, I would speak about it. Which is that Prophet says near the time of the day of judgment, Qiyam Sa'ah, every person who has an opinion will be infatuated and amazed by their own opinion. Like, yo, have you heard my idea? Like, yo, this is my opinion. How can it be wrong? Because it is your opinion. That's what Iblis thought. This mindset is a very Iblisi mindset. That my opinion, since it's supported by facts and rationale, it can't be wrong. Of course it can be wrong. Your timing can be wrong. Your position, just because what you're saying is the truth, doesn't mean it's right to say. Because us youngsters, we say, oh, what I'm saying is the truth though. Yeah, it's the truth. But it's the wrong time, the wrong place, the wrong way of saying it. What Iblis said was the truth. What Iblis said was the truth. He did not lie. He had a very, if there was anyone that could justify a sin, it would be Iblis. Because he was very knowledgeable and he was very, very eloquent. He says, oh Allah, you're asking me to bow? And of course, Iblis naturally had an inferiority complex due to the fact that he was living amongst angels as a non-angel. So he already felt like it's hard for me to compete, right? Imagine living with angels and you're like Iblis. You really have to mask a lot of your emotions, right? And then comes along a second creation, right? Think about the psychology of Iblis. He's living with the angels and he's living with the reality that the angels are greatest creation of Allah. And then comes along this random creation that Allah is making from dirt, and he's saying to Iblis, well, this creation is also better than it. He's like, no. Well, wait a second. The angels, I get it. But this dude, he's made from dirt. Angels are made from light. Light is superior. Light is powerful, is empowering. Dirt. And this is the beauty of the human being, because it's not dirt that makes us special, it's Allah's revelation that makes us special, right? So we don't have the ability to flaunt our physical abilities, because every other creation has stronger physical abilities than us. So Iblis comes around and says, oh Allah, I'm not doing sajda. خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. You have created me. So what I'm saying over here is, even Iblis recognized that Allah was the creator. Recognition, this may sound harsh, recognition is not virtuous. Just because you recognize a reality doesn't make you someone special. Even a blind person can tell when it's dark in the room. Recognition is not a sign of virtue. Recognition is not a sign of virtue. The Jews recognized that the Prophet was a true Prophet more than they recognized their own children. يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. Recognition leads to virtue if it's met with tawbah, if it's met with regret, if it's met with accepting a person's wrong. Then it's virtuous. Or else recognition normally in a society like today leads to a level of arrogance and stubbornness. Yeah, I recognize I'm wrong, but so what? It is what it is, right? Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, I was wrong, but you know what? It's okay. We're all wrong sometimes. Yeah, we are all, but you're wrong right now. How often you hear someone that's wrong say, yeah, I guess you're right. No, Habibi, no. I know I'm right. But you also know you're wrong. It's very easy to say, you're right, but it's very hard to say, I'm wrong, you're right. So normally when we are wrong, we say, yeah, you're right. But we'll never say what? I'm wrong, you're right. Because that negation of the self is the death of us. Because we put ourselves on a pedestal. No one else has. We did it to ourselves. So this idea of يُعْجِبُ كُلُّ ذِي رَأْيٍ بِرَأْيِهِ. Every person is infatuated by their own opinion, by their own lifestyle, by their own ideas, by their own way of thinking. Why? Now this doesn't confine a person, but it simply tells a person, no, scale it back a little bit. If you're talking to your parents and your parents give you an opinion, and you have been thinking about something in your head, and because you have it supported by facts and some data, doesn't mean that it must be right. Why am I so infatuated? Why do people argue over Samsung and iPhone? Like, it's something as simple and mundane as that. It's because we have become so infatuated by our own opinion, as if we were like the PhDs of every field. The Prophet says, this hadith is so powerful. And I wasn't intending to speak about this hadith because it takes some time, but I'll quickly summarize it. The Prophet says, on the day of judgment, أَبْعَدُ النَّاسَ مِنِّي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. This hadith is actually a fairly scary hadith. He says, إِنَّ أَبْغَضَ النَّاسَ إِلَيَّ وَأَبْعَدَكُم مِّنِّي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. He says, the people on the day of judgment that will be the most detested by me. And the Prophet loves everyone. So this is saying a lot. Right? The Prophet's kindness was not to be confused by weakness. And his kindness was not to be confused by someone who didn't know what they wanted. He was kind, but he was stern. He was soft, yet he knew what was right. Right? We're so kind that, oh no, it's okay, I can compromise halal and haram. No, be kind, compromise your own preferences. Don't compromise Allah's preferences. Time of salat is time of salat. It's not kindness now, it's iman. Right? We shouldn't use a veneer of Islam to pacify our lack of ability to commit to halal. So he says, now the people who will be the furthest from أَبْعَدَكُم مِّنِّي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. The people who will be the furthest from me on the day of judgment. It's a pretty heavy hadith. And this is authentic, narrated in Tirmidhi, which is among the 6 books that are Sahih Sitta. The furthest from me on the day of judgment. If I'm far from the Prophet, if someone's far from the Prophet, that means they're far from Allah's mercy. Because ultimately, the Prophet's shafa'ah is what allows us to be able to experience the mercy of Allah. Shafa'at al-kubra, the great intercession. We don't believe in the idea of salvation, but we do believe in the idea of intercession. So the Prophet is saying, you'll be far from me. Who? Like if I ask you right now, we may think, okay, you know what? The person who will be the furthest from the Prophet, it must be an individual who doesn't pay their zakat. It must be a person that doesn't pray salat on time. These are all challenging, situations. Everyone should improve in it. But it's none of this. The Prophet says the person who will be the furthest from me on the day of judgment is الثرثرون المتشددون المتفيهقون. 3 words he uses that summarizes one mindset and one personality syndrome. 3 words, but the same kind of build out. Al-tharthar means a person who speaks about every topic as if he or she is an expert. The Prophet is saying this. That this is a tharthar. This is what يُعْجِبُ كُلُّ ذِي رَأْيٍ بِرَأْيٍ. Why can't I stay quiet when someone is speaking about a topic that I don't know about? Because I think I have to have an opinion. Talking about like politics, yeah, I don't know, man. I think like this, this guy, what's his name again? Like you don't know the person's name. Why are you speaking about him for? Sports stars, like these Houston Mavericks, brother. Like, come on, like why? Just silence is a virtue when there's nothing good to say. And then Islam, I don't know why these scholars do. This is not your place, not the place, not the time. Neither do you have the backing of it. So this is what the Prophet is saying. Like social media, everyone's typing on the comments about every topic. I don't know why they're doing this. Laysa makani, it's not my place to say. Right? This is a tharthar. Every topic that is being discussed, I must be a part of it. No, I don't need to be a part of it. Tharthar. Now when a person does this salah, they become mutashaddid. Mutashaddid means their heart becomes hard. The tongue resting is giving time for the heart to replenish. If the tongue is always speaking, the heart doesn't get a moment to just reconvene with Allah. This is why in salat we're not allowed to speak, because it's our time to connect with Allah. But if a tongue is always speaking, the heart can't connect, because the motor is being used by the tongue. The bandwidth of the body is relying on one of the two. The third quality of this person is al-mutafayhiq. Mutafayhiq means a person who becomes arrogant. A person who talks too much about, by the way, it doesn't mean talk a lot about a topic. It means a person talks a lot about every topic as if they are an expert of it. Not with curiosity, rather with conclusivity. Big difference. Being a curious mind is very virtuous. Being definitive in your statement is problematic. How many of us use the word never? How many of us use the word better? Like this can never be the truth. What, are you God? Right? If you read books like The Outliers and these types of books that talk about leadership, they talk about not using negative terms. Like never, not using terms that are definitive, because those terms that are definitive makes it seem like we are the authority all the time. We're not the authority all the time. Just because we're the authority in front of our children doesn't mean that we're the authority everywhere else in the masjid. Right? And this is the reality. Only Allah is the authority all the time. This is not something that's demeaning or it's defying our strength. It's just a reality. We're human beings. We are reliant upon Allah. Mutafayhiq means a person becomes a narcissist. There are some people you can never correct. So every time you correct them, they'll have another justification. And by the way, we shouldn't think about other people. When we speak about these topics, the person should always think about themselves. Right? That's the only way we can get better as a community. The second sign, I have 2 more minutes. The second sign that I wanted to touch upon was يُقْبَضُ الْأَمَانَةِ تُقْبَضُ الْأَمَانَةِ. Trust will be snatched out of a community. The people you can trust will be as scarce as the people, like the people you can trust will be more scarce than anything else. Trust them with your wealth, your secrets, your family, your children, your sickness, your situation. It's so hard to trust people that now we have to pay psychiatrists to listen to our darkest secrets. Trust. Right? It's so hard to trust people with what we're dealing with in our homes. That why don't you speak to me? I don't trust you. Because the next thing I know, that the whole community knows about my situation with my wife or my children. The whole community knows about my child. Why? The Prophet says, Al-majalisu bil-amana. This is a sign of a munafiq. إِذَا اؤْتُمِنَ أَخَانَ. This is a sign of a munafiq. A small niche of the community having this issue is very normal. It was even present at the time of the Prophet. But this becoming the dominant niche is a sign of the Day of Judgment. The Prophet said that a time will come where to find someone that you can trust, you would have to travel to the furthest mountain. In other words, you would have to really search for someone that you can find. And in other words, it also means to find someone that you can trust means you find someone who no one knows. Because this person is not a good person. They just don't have access to anyone else. Hence they live in a mountain. So when the Prophet is saying that you have to find someone in the mountain, it's not because the guy in the mountain is righteous. It's the guy in the mountain doesn't have access to anyone else. So he's just stuck in the mountain. But this is an issue or a disease that widespread, that spreads over the community. You can't trust people. Sometimes children can't trust their parents. Siblings. Al-majalisu bil-amana. The Prophet says even the majlis is amana. Majlis, like if I'm sitting with 3 friends of mine and I'm speaking about something, the default setting of that meeting is that whatever I'm telling you, you're not allowed to tell anyone else. How many times does it happen that you tell someone something else and the guy comes to you and says, hey man, sister, why do you tell people? You never told me not to tell anyone. Right? You never told me? No. That in order for you to be allowed to tell, you need permission from me. The default is that you can't tell. And the third thing, and I'll wrap up with this, these are signs that are present and we can reflect upon. These are the signs of the Day of Judgment. That people decay in these types of ethics and morals of life. Everyone is speaking so much, as if they're an authority of every topic of life. Everyone, why is it so difficult for a son or a daughter to concede to the father or mother's opinion? Because if son or daughter say, well, we're raised in America, we know better. I mean, no one's saying you don't know better. But it doesn't mean that you have to be the authority. That's what Iblis wanted authority over humanity. That's not the way it works. Number two, allowing people to trust us. Becoming trustworthy people. People should be able to trust us with their wealth, their children, their speech, their secrets. Become a community that supports each other in moments of difficulty. And the last sign of the Day of Judgment, that's something that's very common in today's time as well, is the way that youngsters treat their parents. And this can be a topic for another day. But these are two methods, two pedagogies, if I can say, through which the Salaf learned about the signs of the Day of Judgment. One was reflecting upon the signs that were present in their society so they know that that Day of Judgment is not too far from them. Number two is reflect upon the major signs to teach the community that your situation could have been worse. Both are pedagogies that we should use to reflect upon the signs of the Day of Judgment. I'm sure you'll go through all of them. But the signs of the Day of Judgment are not to just be entertained by. They're actually there in our books of hadith to reflect on so we can better ourselves in our ibadah, in our humanity. How to simply become better people. There is no verse in the Quran. There is no sunnah, there's no hadith in the prophetic corpus and tradition that does not make us better people. That does not make us better people. Even the hadith that talks about alcohol, or that talks about like the signs of Dajjal, like Dajjal, even that hadith makes us better people. May Allah make us amongst those people that can reflect on these signs. Do our best to continue bettering ourselves in ways that only Allah can help us with, and allow us to continue attending sessions like this. May Allah reward you all, bless you all, and allow us to become people that can support each other, inshallah ta'ala, in our growth in deen. Jazakallah khair.